He was just a plumber, or so I thought. But nothing could have prepared me for how one broken pipe would turn into something that changed my life forever. I'll never forget that day. It started out so ordinary, so quiet, like the kind of day where nothing important ever happens. The sun poured lazily through the curtains, casting a golden glow across my small apartment. I was sprawled out on the couch, half watching mindless TV, half scrolling through my phone, just existing in the kind of peaceful silence you don't usually notice until it's broken. Then it happened. A strange gurgling noise from the bathroom, followed by a splash that made my heart jump. I sat up instantly. That sound, I'd heard it before. The pipes. Again. I sighed. I tried fixing them once after watching a YouTube tutorial, thinking it would be simple. It wasn't. I ended up making a bigger mess and nearly flooding the floor. I knew better now. So I picked up my phone and found the number of the local plumber I'd used once before. He had been professional, quiet, quick, just what I needed. When he knocked an hour later, I opened the door and there he was. Same guy, same strong presence. Maybe a couple years older than me, early 30s, with a thick beard and eyes that made it hard to look away. His work shirt hugged his frame in a way that was hard not to notice. "Hey, I'm here for the busted pipe," he said, flashing a brief smile. "Yeah, it's in the bathroom," I replied, trying not to stare. I stepped aside and let him in. He walked straight to the bathroom, toolbox in hand, and crouched down under the sink like he knew the space already. He moved with this quiet confidence, like someone who didn't need to prove anything to anyone. I stood by the doorway, watching him work. I told myself I was just being polite, but that wasn't the truth. I noticed the way his shirt stretched across his back when he moved, the way his arms flexed with ease. It was distracting, way too distracting. I looked away and told myself, he's just a plumber. But that didn't stop my pulse from quickening. After a few minutes, he stood up and wiped his hands on a rag. "All set," he said, turning to face me. "Replace the pipe and tighten everything up. Should be good now." "Thanks," I replied, my voice more casual than I felt. He was standing a little too close, or maybe it just felt that way. "I appreciate it." He didn't move right away. His eyes met mine, and for a second, it lingered, just long enough to make me wonder if he felt it too. "You sure there's nothing else you need help with?" he asked, his voice casual, but not entirely. There was something else in the way he said it, something that made my skin prickle. I hesitated. My heart started beating faster. Was it just me, reading into nothing? Or was he? "Well, actually," I said, feeling a little flush rise up my neck. "There might be something else." His eyebrow lifted just slightly. He took a step closer. "Oh yeah? What's that?" I opened my mouth, but nothing came out at first. It was hard to explain, hard to admit. My brain told me to keep it simple, but my heart was already way ahead of me. "I've been thinking about you," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, "since the moment you walked in." For a second, he just looked at me. Then his lips curved into the smallest smile, as if he'd been waiting for me to say it. He took another step forward. My breath caught. The air between us shifted. Thicker, warmer, something unspoken hanging heavy. We weren't touching, but I could feel him like gravity pulling me closer. "Is that right?" he murmured, voice low and rough. I nodded, my throat too dry to speak again. I didn't know what I expected, didn't know what would happen next, but I didn't want him to leave. His hand came up slowly, cupping the side of my face. It was such a simple gesture, gentle, warm, but it sent a shiver down my spine. His thumb brushed my cheek, soft but sure. My body froze, but not out of fear. It was the kind of stillness that comes when everything in you is bracing for something real, something different. And in that tiny, charged bathroom, nothing had ever felt so close or so complicated. One kiss changed everything. It wasn't just a spark, it was a wildfire. But when reality crept back in, we were left with a question neither of us could answer: what now? But before I could even decide, he closed the distance between us and pressed his lips to mine. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, like we were both testing the waters. But the second our lips met, the hesitation vanished, melting into something deeper, something real. A fierce, undeniable need took over, and suddenly we weren't thinking anymore. We were just feeling. His hands roamed over my body, pulling me closer as the kiss deepened. I felt a rush of heat explode through me, like electricity under my skin. It was unlike anything I had ever experienced. Every brush of his fingers, every movement of his lips, it all sent sparks shooting down my spine. The world outside disappeared. Nothing else mattered. Not the broken pipe. Not the afternoon sun leaking through the curtains. Not even the drip of water from a newly repaired sink. There was just him, just us, and the fire that was rapidly consuming everything between us. His hands, rough from years of hard work, moved over me with a kind of gentleness that made my breath catch. I felt the firm pressure of his mouth on mine, each kiss more urgent than the last. I pulled him closer without thinking, my fingers bunching into the fabric of his shirt, feeling the firm lines of his chest beneath. He growled low and rough and gripped my waist like he didn't want to let me go. The kiss deepened. Our bodies pressed together. For a second, I forgot everything else. Forgot where we were. Forgot the boundaries we were crossing. It was just instinct and need and emotion colliding in a single moment that neither of us had planned. And then, just as suddenly as it began, he pulled away. His breath was heavy. His eyes searched mine, wide and uncertain. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it in my ears. We stood there, still close enough to feel the heat between us. But something had changed. The reality of what we'd just done was catching up with us. I started, but the words died in my throat. What could I even say? That I hadn't expected it? That I didn't know what had come over me? That I didn't regret a single second of it? His gaze softened. The earlier intensity in his expression faded into something else, something uncertain, maybe even vulnerable. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice quieter now. His hand still rested on my waist, grounding me. I nodded, swallowing hard. "Yeah, just surprise, I guess." He chuckled softly, and the sound, warm and real, eased some of the tension in the air. "You and me both." For a long moment, we didn't speak. We just stood there in that cramped bathroom, close enough to feel the pull between us, but too unsure what to do with it. The question hung in the air like smoke. What now? I took a breath, trying to steady myself. "I didn't expect this," I admitted, my voice low. "But I don't regret it." His eyes flickered with something I couldn't quite name. Relief, maybe, or understanding. He stepped back slightly, giving me some space, but he didn't let go of my arm. "Neither do I." Those 3 words hit me harder than I expected. Not a confession. Not a grand romantic gesture. Just honesty. Simple, raw, and real. He glanced around the bathroom, rubbing the back of his neck, like he wasn't quite sure what to do next. "I should probably finish up and head out," he said, though there was hesitation in his voice, like he didn't really want to leave. I nodded, even though the thought of him walking out the door made my chest tighten. I didn't want this to end. I didn't want to be alone with just the memory of that kiss. But I didn't know how to ask him to stay. I didn't even know if I had the right to. "You don't have to rush," I said, trying to sound casual. "I mean, if you're not busy." He raised an eyebrow, a slow smile spreading across his face. "You asking me to stick around?" I felt a flush crawl up my neck. "I just thought we could hang out for a bit. Maybe grab a drink or something." He chuckled, this time louder, easier. "You're pretty smooth, you know that?" I shrugged, playing it cool even though my heart was hammering in my chest. Just trying to be a good host. "Well, in that case," he said, grinning, "I guess I can stick around." We left the bathroom, the tension between us easing slightly as we moved into the living room. I grabbed 2 beers from the fridge and handed him one. We sat down on the couch, side by side, but still feeling that undercurrent of electricity between us. For a few minutes, it felt almost normal, like we were just 2 guys hanging out on a lazy afternoon, talking about nothing, laughing about stupid things. We made small talk, work, the weather, whatever we could think of to avoid talking about what had just happened. But the more we talked, the more comfortable I felt. The tension slowly melted into something warmer. There was a rhythm to our conversation, a flow that surprised me. It felt easy, natural, like maybe we'd known each other longer than just a couple of house calls. Still, under the surface, something simmered. Every time our fingers brushed, every glance that lasted a second too long, the pull between us hadn't disappeared. If anything, it had grown stronger. Eventually, we ran out of words. We sipped our beers in silence, the golden light from the setting sun casting long shadows across the room. You ever think about what just happened? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He turned to me, his expression unreadable at first. Then he nodded. Yeah, I've been thinking about it a lot. I wasn't sure if I should feel nervous or relieved. He set his beard down, leaning forward, elbows on his knees. I think we both know there's something between us. My heart skipped a beat. Hearing him say it out loud made it feel more real. I nodded, unsure if I could trust my voice. I'm not saying I know what this is, he went on, or where it's going, but I know I don't want to ignore it. I felt the tension in my chest ease. Just a little. Me neither. He looked over at me again. So what do we do now? I gave a small laugh, soft and a little nervous. I guess we figured out. Together. He smiled, and it wasn't flirtatious or teasing this time. It was real, quiet, steady, like maybe, just maybe, we weren't as lost as we thought. Outside, the sky was turning from orange to deep blue. Evening was settling in, and somehow, the space between us felt a little less uncertain. For now, this was enough. Still simmering, waiting for the right moment to resurface. When Luke finally stood to leave, I felt a pang of disappointment. I didn't want him to go. I didn't want the night to end. But deep down, I knew we were taking things slow, building something more than just a fleeting moment. He lingered by the door, his hand resting on the handle as he turned to look at me one last time. "I'll see you again soon, right?" he asked. I smiled, warmth spreading through my chest. "Definitely." He nodded, a small smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "Good. I'll call you." With that, he opened the door and stepped out into the night, leaving me standing in the quiet of my apartment, heart still racing from the intensity of the evening. I leaned against the door, my mind spinning, replaying every moment. It wasn't just a physical connection that left me breathless. It was deeper than that. The way we looked at each other, the way we both acknowledged that this wasn't just a one-time thing. For the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful, like maybe, just maybe, I'd found something real, something worth holding on to. But the story didn't end there. The best part was still to come. The days that followed were a strange mix of anticipation and nervousness. I couldn't stop thinking about Luke, about everything that had happened, about what might happen next. He'd said he would call. And even though it hadn't been long, I caught myself checking my phone more often than usual, waiting to see his name light up the screen. When the call finally came, it was late in the afternoon. The golden light of the setting sun was streaming across my living room floor. I glanced at the screen. My heart leapt. "Luke, hey," I said, trying to sound casual, even though my pulse had quickened just hearing his voice. "Hey," he replied, his tone low and warm. "I was wondering if you'd like to grab a drink tonight. Nothing fancy, just to hang out." I smiled. I couldn't help it. "Yeah, I'd like that." "Great," he said, the relief in his voice clear. "I'll pick you up around 7? "Perfect." I hung up, my heart racing with a mix of excitement and nerves. I knew tonight wasn't just about grabbing drinks. It was about taking the next step, figuring out what this was between us. But for the first time, that uncertainty didn't scare me. It felt exciting. By the time 7 p.m. rolled around, I was ready. I'd spent the better part of the afternoon trying not to obsess over it, but now that the moment had arrived, I felt strangely calm. When Luke knocked, I opened the door to find him standing there in a simple button-down shirt and jeans, looking effortlessly handsome. "Ready?" he asked, his eyes lighting up when he saw me. "Yeah." I stepped outside, closing the door behind me. We headed to a small, cozy bar just a few blocks away. The kind of place that was alive, but not loud, private enough to talk. intimate enough to feel like our own little world. We found a booth in the corner and ordered drinks. And for hours, we just talked. He told me about work, about growing up in the city, about little things that made him laugh or think or feel something. And I share my own pieces, how I ended up in my apartment, the things that made me stay, the things I didn't say to most people. It was easy, natural, like we'd known each other for longer than we had. But as the night went on, the conversation shifted, and that weight, the one from the night in my apartment, crept back into the space between us. So, Luke said, setting down his drink, his eyes meeting mine, "We haven't really talked about the other night." My heart skipped, but I nodded. "Yeah, we haven't." He leaned in slightly, his voice softer now. "I'm not trying to rush anything. I've been thinking about it. About us." My pulse quickened. "Me too." A pause stretched between us, thick with things we hadn't said. But somehow, it didn't feel uncomfortable, just honest. "I don't want this to be a one-time thing," he said, echoing the words he'd spoken in my apartment. "I think there's something here. Something real. Something worth exploring." His words settled over me like a soft blanket, warm, reassuring. I had felt it too, but hearing him say it made it real. "I agree," I said, voice quiet but sure. "I don't want it to be a one-time thing either." Luke's expression softened. He reached across the table, his fingers brushing against mine. The touch was simple, barely there, but it sent a thrill through me all the same. "So what do we do now?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He chuckled gently, his thumb brushing the back of my hand. "I guess we take it one step at a time." I nodded, exhaling a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. We didn't have to have all the answers tonight. We just had to keep showing up. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of shared laughter and slow smiles. By the time the bar was closing, we were back on our feet, walking through the quiet streets toward my apartment. The night air was crisp. Everything felt still. When we reached my door, Luke hesitated. His gaze flicked from the door to me. "I should probably go," he said, though his tone betrayed his reluctance. I bit my lip, not quite ready for the night to end. "You don't have to." He looked at me, searching my face. And for a second, I thought he might say no. But then he smiled, sliding his hand into mine and stepping closer. "Okay," he whispered. That simple word changed everything. Because what happened next wasn't about rushing into anything. It was about letting the quiet in, letting our walls down, and learning how to be seen. What came after, okay, was more than just the end of the night. It was the start of something neither of us had expected. Something that just might be love. Inside the quiet of the apartment, a soft hush settled over us like a blanket. The low hum of the city outside felt a world away as I closed the door behind us, sealing the night into something that felt more private, more ours. For a moment, we didn't move. The air between us was thick, with everything we hadn't yet said, with everything that had been building up since that first unexpected connection. I stood there, unsure what to do next, but then Luke reached for me, slowly, almost cautiously, and pulled me into his arms. The warmth of him, the way his body fit against mine, felt like a memory I had only half forgotten. His heartbeat thudded gently beneath my palm as I rested it against his chest, grounding me in something real, something present. His eyes searched mine, and then without a word, he leaned in. The kiss came naturally, soft, slow, familiar, yet somehow different this time. There was no tension or hesitation, no need to prove anything. Just a quiet, unfolding connection between two people who had already shared so much and were ready to share more. It deepened, that kiss, gradually at first, then all at once. But not with the rush fire of new infatuation. No, this was something else. Something steadier. It was as if we were both trying to memorize the feel of it, the rhythm, the way it shaped the space between us. I felt in the way his hands cupped my face gently, like I was something fragile. In the way his lips moved against mine, firm yet reverent. We stumbled toward the couch, laughing quietly as we bumped into the armrest before finally landing in a heap of limbs and laughter. Our bodies pressed together again, But this time, the heat that simmered wasn't just physical. It carried meaning, intention. His hand ran slowly down my back, steady and sure, and I shivered, not from the cold, but from the overwhelming tenderness of it. Luke pulled back just enough to study me, his eyes dark but soft. "You okay?" he asked, his voice low. I nodded, brushing my fingers against the side of his face. "Yeah," I whispered. "More than okay." He smiled then, one of those quiet, private smiles that said everything he didn't need to say out loud. He tucked a strand of hair behind my ear, his fingers lingering there for a moment, and I leaned into his touch. His hand slid beneath the hem of my shirt, fingertips grazing bare skin, warm and gentle. I gasped softly at the contact. It wasn't even the touch itself, but the way he touched me, like I mattered, like this moment mattered. There was no rush between us, no sense of urgency to chase some conclusion. We had waited this long. We could wait a little longer. We were learning each other's rhythms, responding to every small reaction with care. There was a patience to it, a reverence I hadn't known I'd needed until now. I pulled away just enough to catch my breath, my chest rising and falling with emotion more than exertion. Our foreheads touched. His eyes locked on mine. "It's okay," I whispered, voice shaky but sure. "I want this. I want you." Luke let out a breath that sounded like a release of everything he'd been holding in. "Me too," he murmured, his voice rough with something that felt deeper than desire. We didn't move quickly. We didn't need to. Every kiss, every lingering glance, every brush of skin against skin felt deliberate, like a promise being made wordlessly between us. I memorized the way his laughter rumbled low when I said something stupid, the way his thumb traced absent circles against my wrist, the way his voice softened when he said my name like it was something precious. And slowly, over the course of that night, we let ourselves fall, not just into each other, but into something bigger. We talked in between silences, about things that didn't always matter, and some things that did. He told me how he hated sleeping with the windows shut, how he used to climb out onto fire escape when he needed space to think. I told him about my dreams, the ones I used to have when I was a kid, the ones I still didn't say out loud to most people. He listened, really listened, and I realized in those quiet moments that falling for someone wasn't always thunder and lightning. It could be soft, like rainfall, like a quiet settling into place. At one point, wrapped up together on the couch, Luke looked over at me. The flicker of city light through the blinds painted shadows across his face. "You ever think," he began, voice quiet, "that maybe things happen when they're supposed to?" I looked at him, really looked at him, and nodded. "Yeah, I think that all the time." He leaned in, his forehead pressed against mine again. "Then maybe maybe it's happening exactly when it's meant to." I smiled, my eyes stinging just a little from the intensity of everything I felt. "I think you might be right." The night stretched on, soft and infinite. We stayed there, wrapped up together on the couch, sometimes talking, sometimes not, just breathing, just being. I couldn't remember the last time I had felt so completely seen, so utterly safe. And I knew without question that I didn't want this to end. When morning light finally began to spill through the windows, pale and golden, we were still there. He was asleep beside me, one arm draped over my waist, his breathing slow and even. I didn't move. I didn't want to wake him. Instead, I let myself memorize this perfect, fragile stillness. Because somehow, in a city that never stopped moving, I had found something still, something steady, something real. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid of what came next. I was ready. If this story made your heart flutter even a little, don't forget to like, share, and hit that subscribe button. There's so much more to come. More stories, more moments, more reasons to believe and love again. Let's take it one step at a time, together,